Well, something that we're always concerned about here in the RV is the cleanliness of our drinking water. Now, we primarily are boondocking around the Southwest and are sourcing our water from a number of different sources, but you're just never sure how clean it is when you drink it. Now, we filter it, and sometimes filter it up to 3 times, but you just don't know. You know, you're just not fully 100% certain that it doesn't have anything in there that's going to potentially get you sick. As I've been making some upgrades here in the kitchen, like installing this new kitchen faucet, I wanted to also install a water purification system, which is just this final level of defense to your drinking water to purify it and make sure that it is 100% or almost 100% clean and healthy before we drink it. So the folks at ACUVA set us up with this ACUVA ArrowMax 2.0. It's their latest water purification system, and we're going to go ahead and get that installed here to go with our nice new water faucet here in the kitchen sink that I recently installed. And it also has its own little water faucet that goes along with this that has a nice little blue light and shows you when it's purifying, and it's going to be a nice complement to this one here in the kitchen. And it's going to serve us up some drinking water that we're sure is not going to get us sick. So we're pretty excited about getting this installed. I think it's going to be pretty easy. And I also want to give you some pointers on installing a kitchen faucet like this if you want to do that in your own RV, because it's a pretty easy project, but there's a couple of potential gotchas that I want to share with you, some tips that might make that go a little bit smoother for you. So let's jump right in. I'll talk about the kitchen faucet and we'll get to the ACUVA system install. Well, before we jump in with the install, I want to just briefly tell you what we're doing here in case you're just joining us for the first time. Now, we've always traveled in a Class C motorhome, and we've recently transitioned over to this Class A and are in the process of upgrading it with some pretty major and some fairly minor upgrades. Be sure to check out some of the other videos if you want to follow along with this whole upgrade to this RV. One of the things that you can really do that doesn't take a lot of effort or expense, and it really gives your kitchen just a more updated look, is to upgrade the fixtures in here, like this nice new brushed nickel kitchen faucet. It's got the sprayer, and you know, it's just like the kind you'd have at home. If you're thinking of doing something like this, it's totally doable, but there's a couple things that you probably want to know before you go out and choose a fixture for your rig. One of them is just make sure that it fits the holes in your countertop. You may have one big hole in the middle here, or you may have one that has 3 holes, and you want to make sure that the fixture you get either has this faceplate that's going to cover all the holes on your sink. The other thing to look out for is your connections. The newer connections are actually a different size and style connection for what you may have installed or available here on your water line on the other side or underside of your sink. And you may need to go to the hardware store and pick up an adapter to make sure that you can connect the faucet here, the hot and cold line, to your water lines coming in from the RV. Just double check all that stuff before you start taking things apart and removing them, and it'll go much smoother. Overall, the install went pretty smoothly. I used some Teflon tape to make sure that I wrapped all of the threads and tightened everything down nicely. It just looks and operates really nicely, and it really gives you an updated look here in the kitchen. We also upgraded the faucet in our bathroom, which also had this old brass colored fixture in there that we didn't really like the look of it. Now, there are 2 parts to this ACUVA system. One of them is the purification piece here, which is actually the final stage, which is going to run your water through this through this UV purification. It's going to kill all the living things that are in the water, any bacteria, any other parasites, or anything that that you're not going to typically be able to filter out with a charcoal filter or any other kind of filter. So that's the final stage, but it also comes with a pre-filter option if you don't have an existing filter in your system. So the way that this installs is it comes with a T, so you can basically tie it into your existing water line, and it's like a 1/2-inch PEX water line. It's a compression kind of T, and from there it will tee off onto this 1/4-inch tube. Now, we already have a filter installed in our RV underneath the sink here, so I'm not going to really need this. This filter is great if you don't have an existing filter built into your system, but we're just not going to need it for our install, so I'm going to leave that out. I don't need the T either. So what I am going to use is the rest of this stuff. This is going to mount somewhere inside the cabinet, and it uses this DIN rail mount on the back here, which is basically, it's going to clip in to this rail, and you just screw this rail to the back of your cabinet somewhere underneath the sink. And the other thing to point out is that that this does require 12-volt power, which is great because you can wire it directly to your 12-volt system, and then this power output will plug right into the unit here. I already have a 12-volt source identified that I can use for this system, and we're going to cut some tubing to fit our install, which is going to actually go into this little water faucet piece that's going to mount on top of the sink here and replace this. Plugs in right there. It's got a little LED on here that's going to light up when it's actually purifying the water. So that's really all there is. There's an input, a water line input. Now this is the out. This is the water line input here, water line output. The little water faucet's going to plug in here, and the water output's going to go right to it. And we've got a power source. Well, since I don't have to install the pre-filter option, the first thing I'm going to do is find a location to install the main ACUVA unit here. So for me, I think in the back wall is the best location for me. It's kind of out of the way, but being able to mount it first, it gives me a good idea of how long the connections need to be to plug in for the water and the power. Now the next step is to hook up the incoming water line. Now if you are using the T connector to just tap into your incoming cold water line, then you're probably just going to cut your 1/4-inch tube to length to go in and just press it in. For me, I'm going to actually use the water line that's already coming out of my filter, and it's already a 1/4-inch line. So I just have to cut the tip off, which I found the best way to do that is just to use a sharp utility knife, and I cut a block of wood and put a little groove in it so that I can get a nice clean cut, across that plastic tube. You certainly don't want to use any wire cutters or anything that's going to pinch it. You want just a nice sharp knife to give you a nice clean cut to fit into that compression fitting. All right, now I'm going to connect the smart faucet. I ended up having to enlarge the hole just a little bit so that the faucet and this I guess power cord can fit into the hole. This part would fit just fine, but with the cord it was a little too tight. So I just enlarged the hole and it fits just fine now. We do the final connection to the actual ACUVA unit itself. There's a couple of really small little plastic pieces here that you definitely don't want to lose. The first time I took everything out of the bag, I realized that they kind of flew out somewhere, and I had to search for them to find them. So make sure that you don't lose those two little pieces. This little a little ring that goes around the connection to the tube, and there's a little ferrule that also goes around the other end. And this is the part that actually connects to the faucet itself. And just before the connection to the ACUVA unit, I have to install this flow restrictor, and it's got an arrow that indicates the which way the water would be flowing. And I believe this just slows the water flow down so that it can properly purify the water. Can't go through the unit too fast. Let's get this mounted here to secure the faucet. So I can get in here. Okay, that'll work. We'll thread this guy on. Alright, then we can plug in the water line now. Make sure it's all the way in, and then give it a little tug. All right. Now we're down to the final step, and that is to connect the power to some 12-volt power. Now I've already identified a 12-volt source and put some of those Wago connectors on there, so it's simply just attaching the positive and negative to that 12-volt source. And then we'll plug in the power connector to the ACUVA unit, and it should fire right up. Nothing weird in there, I'm tasting. But a couple of notes about this setup is, first of all, this is an on-demand system. So it's not always running, but it does draw a tiny bit of power when it's in standby mode. Well, in the document here, it says that when in standby mode, it draws 0.01 watts. So barely anything, but when it actually is doing the purification, when you actually turn on the handle there and you're using some water, it draws 14 watts. So for just very short periods of time, so it's not going to consume a lot of power. You could put this on a separate switch if you wanted to. I'll probably install an inline fuse. It recommends like a 3 amp fuse just to protect it, but I'm sure that circuit that I have it on is already on a circuit breaker, but I'll double check all that. The other thing is that, because it's purifying the water through this LED cycle, that it does flow a little bit slower. You saw we installed that flow restrictor, so that slows down the flow, but it's still totally adequate for drinking water, for filling up our coffee pot reservoir. We use a Keurig. Yeah, just a little bit slower than the previous one, but it's doing that purification as it goes through the ACUVA unit. But yeah, we'll check it out. We're pretty excited because we're getting ready to head to Mexico pretty soon, and not having to worry about buying bottled water all the time, and just feeling that the water we're drinking is safe and it's not going to get us sick is going to really give us a lot of peace of mind and go a long way. But I'll drop an affiliate link for this from ACUVA in the description if you want to check it out further, and I'll try to work out some sort of discount if you're interested in picking one of these up for yourself. And if you do have an ACUVA and you've been using it for a while, please drop some comments below and let us know how it's been working out for you. The ACUVA site also has some really good tutorials. If there's part of the installation that you missed or want just more information, they have a couple of really short installation videos that may help. But I'll see you next time, and glad that I finally got this installed and that we'll be drinking some nice clean drinking water. Take care. See you in the next one.